Hey friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're back in the kitchen and we are getting ready to make a big batch of stuffed shells. Now we're going to be making a few for Andy and I to eat for dinner and baking those up. The rest, I'm going to show you how I freeze them and how we use them for the next couple of months to make quick and easy meals. So if you want to see how I do that, stick around. Hey friends, thanks for sticking around. Well, it is the weekend after Christmas. We just got back from celebrating Christmas with our families in Springfield, and I still have my Christmas stuff up, and I'll have that up for probably through New Year's into the next weekend, and then I'll start taking it down. It's just so hard to take it down when it looks so pretty, but we'll enjoy it for another week at least, and then we'll be starting to take it down. But today, since I'm back in the kitchen, I am going to share with you a recipe for stuffed shells. Now, when I do stuffed shells, I like to make a large batch and then freeze them so that I can use them for the next several months. And they are very, very handy. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make a big batch for the freezer, and then we're also going to take some of those stuffed shells and make a dinner for Andy and I for tonight. So I'm going to show you how that is done. I've got all my ingredients laid out here, and so I'm just going to read you what we're going to be putting into this. Now, usually when I make this, I do not have a recipe that I follow. I just throw things in and use things that I have on hand. But I know that's not going to be helpful for you. So I've written out the recipe the best that I could, what I usually do, and I think this will be easy for you to follow. And you can, of course, cut this recipe in half if you want, but like I say, it's gonna be a big recipe, and it's going to use a full box of these, and I think we're going to have extra filling too, but we'll see. So we'll just play it by ear because, like I said, I usually don't follow a recipe, and so we'll see what we have left over, and then we might make something with that as well. So you're going to need a 12-ounce box of the jumbo shells. You can get those at your grocery store. I use either 2 of these ricottas, or you can use one of the really large ones. These are the 15-ounce. And the large ones may be 32 ounce. I'm not sure on that, but they're about double. I'm going to use 3 cups of mozzarella. Usually I use mozzarella, but today I've gone to my freezer and I noticed we had a lot of this Italian blend cheese, and it's got mozzarella, provolone, a couple of other things in it, and I thought, well, this will be good too. So you're going to need 3 cups of whatever cheeses you like. Mozzarella is a good one for this because it does give it that good texture, but if you don't have it, hey, use these other cheese. They'll be delicious as well. I'm also using 2 eggs, some parsley, and remember, I have parsley in my freezer. If you don't have fresh or frozen parsley, just use the dried parsley and you'll substitute for that, and that's fine. One of the optional things that you can do, and I'm doing it to this one, is add spinach. And I'm using a 1/4 cup of spinach, and if you saw, I did a video during the summer or early part of the summer when our spinach was getting ripe, and I just took the spinach, I blanched it, and then I put it and squeezed it into balls and placed them in muffin cups. I froze it that way, and then I pulled those balls of frozen spinach out and put them in a Ziploc bag. And so whenever I need spinach, I just pull one out, and I've thawed this one. It doesn't look very pretty right now, but it tastes delicious, and I'll be chopping it up here soon. It's not chopped or anything, it's just the full leaves all packed together. Also salt and pepper to taste. When we get to making the actual dish, the pasta dish, we'll be using some spaghetti sauce or pasta sauce, some additional cheese. We also want to use a cup of Parmesan cheese for our stuffed shells, and so we can also use some Parmesan cheese for our dish as well. And you can have this served without meat. We like to add sausage. You can add ground pork, sausage, ground turkey, ground chicken, ground beef, any of those things, or have it without meat. We do like the taste of sausage in ours. So we're going to be adding sausage to our dish. So let's get started. I think I've got everything. Oh, and I'm going to also add some garlic. So we'll be chopping up some garlic. So let's get started. We're going to make the filling. Now, before I started filming this, I went ahead and I took my jumbo shells. I boiled a big pot of water that was salted, and I threw them all in after the water started boiling. And I boiled, I think, for 10 minutes. I believe these actually said to boil 14 to 15 minutes. I just did 10 minutes because I want them to be soft enough to stuff, but I don't want to overcook them because they're going to be cooking also in our dish. So I find that cooking just enough that you can get them open and stuffed without breaking them is perfect. After they've cooked for that 10 minutes, I immediately drain them and run cold water over them in a strainer. And then I let them set for just a few minutes in that cold water to chill all the way through. Then I've got them draining in this pan right now. And I also browned up my sausage, so I was able to do both of those at the stove at one time. So when you cook meat for a pasta dish, make sure you brown it. Some people just cook it and it's just gray color. You want it to be brown to get that extra flavor. So be sure you brown it nicely. And if it has extra fat on it, be sure you strain that off. All right, so we are ready to go. Now, I had just taken this cheese out of the freezer a little bit ago, so it's a little bit frozen, and that's fine. And again, I cook with what I have. I've had all of this stuff in the freezer. I had picked these up a couple of weeks ago, knowing that I was going to be making this. And I'm just now having time to do that. And then I try to keep an assortment of pastas in our shelf. We always have Parmesan cheese in our pantry. Of course, eggs, the parsley from our garden, the spinach from our garden. We buy cheese in bulk and bag it up, so we always have an assortment of cheese in our freezer. Now, I don't like to freeze sliced cheese. I like to freeze the shredded cheese because sliced cheese, some varieties, will crumble a lot once they've thawed. So I always, if I get a big block of cheese, I will shred it and make sure it is shredded and then freeze it in Ziploc bags. So I have everything out. I'm ready to go. So again, have your pasta ready, and then it's just really super easy. So what we're gonna start with is we're gonna start with our ricotta cheese. And again, we're going to use 2 of these smaller sized containers. And this is 15 ounces. And you can use the skim or the whole milk, either one, just whatever you want to use. I think I've got this one open already. Okay, got those in there. And then while it's still nice and smooth, we're gonna put our eggs in there. I have 2 eggs. And I'm just going to give them a little bit of a quick mix so that the egg yolk is broken up and it's a little easier to incorporate. And then we're just going to stir that in. And it's easier to get that egg incorporated now than it will be once we get the cheese in. Next, I'm going to add 1 cup of Parmesan cheese. And you can use the blend as well. I think it's got the Romano cheese and stuff in it. That's fine too. Now, I've heard of recipes that use some cream cheese with this too, and I think that would be nice and yummy, but I've never done that. Okay, let's add our chopped up parsley. Again, this is about 1/4 cup of chopped parsley. If you're using dried parsley, I'd probably use about 1 tablespoon. And then we're going to take our spinach that we have here. And if you had fresh spinach, that would be perfect. Just chop it up really fine. And put it in. It's going to be bigger and it'll look like you've got a ton in there, but when spinach cooks, it will really wilt up and shrink down. And this is a lot of spinach in this little ball here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it because they're still in full leaves. And then I'm going to see, I think I need to cut some more. I want it to be easy enough to eat. I don't want it to be in big pieces. And if you notice there's a lot of water, you can definitely squeeze the water out. And I do notice there is some water in here, so I'm going to squeeze mine. And that way it won't dilute our filling. And now we're just going to put that. And spinach is completely optional. I like to add it. It adds flavor, plus it's really good for you. Just make sure it's all well stirred, because once you get the cheese in, it's a little trickier. Now I'm going to take some whole garlic cloves. If you want to use garlic powder, you could, granulated garlic. I've got 3 nice size ones here. We love garlic. I've never had anything that has too much garlic. So if you're not as fond of garlic, you can limit that amount and do less, or you could even leave it out. It's up to you. But I do want to chop it up nice and fine. If you had your, I do have a garlic press, and I could have used that, but I didn't want to make it dirty today. I'm trying to do this nice and quickly. Like I said, we just got home yesterday evening, and there's a lot of things I need to get caught up on around the house. So we're going to get this made, and that way supper is ready, even though it won't be time to eat until later. I hope you guys had a great Christmas. I hope you saw your family and friends and were able to enjoy the time together. We had a really nice Christmas just with the boys and my husband and I here at home, and then also with our family in Springfield. It was so nice to see everyone. But you know, when you're getting together that often with people, a lot of food is being passed around, and I think I've had my share of sweets for the next year. So I think I'm going to have to now say no more sugar. Of course, that won't happen. But we'll have to limit it anyway. It's kind of nice to enjoy it during the holidays, but then not have to worry about it later. And I'm going to add a little bit of this, probably one of these cloves, to my sausage. That'll be good in my sauce here that we're making later. But you could add all of it in there if you want. So I chop that up pretty small. All right, so I've got the ricotta, the cheese, the Parmesan cheese, the eggs, the parsley, the spinach, the garlic, and now let's add our 3 cups of cheese. And this does make a large batch, and you can see it's going to fill this bowl. I was a little concerned about the size of my bowl. I like to use this bowl so that you can see what's in it and what it's looking like. But it does make it a little hard to use when I've got lots of ingredients. So we'll just fold that over gently. Now we can also add salt or pepper. I'm going to add a little pepper. I'm not going to add salt because that Parmesan cheese in there is plenty of salt. It has plenty of salt in it. And so we're just going to add some pepper, some black pepper. Also, you could add a little bit of cayenne, just a little bit, just if you want just a tiny bit of a kick, or some ground chili pepper. But I'm keeping this just plain. I will add that stuff to my sauce if I want to have a bit of a kick. Okay, so I'm going to get this cleaned up. I'm going to get some pepper and bring it over, and then we're going to start stuffing our peppers. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm just going to add some ground pepper. And stir that in. And you're going to have a nice, thick filling. Okay, so then you're going to take a spoon and you're going to take a shell and you're going to open up your shell, and you can determine how full you want your shells. I usually like to take a nice big tablespoonful, or actually just a little more. And I like for it just to be barely closed, just the edges touching. And I have here a cookie sheet with parchment paper on it, and I'm going to lay out all of these shells onto this parchment paper. So what we're going to do is we're going to be freezing all of the shells except for the ones we're using this evening. So we will put them on this sheet and we will freeze them, and that's called flash freezing them. Freeze them on the sheet in the freezer until they're solid, and then once they're solid, I will put them in a Ziploc bag and I will keep them in the freezer. When you freeze them by flash freezing, it makes it so they're not going to stick together in the bag, or if they do stick together, they're real easy to break apart. And that way you can easily grab however many you need. And these are so handy to use for any meals. You can have them, just all you have to do is open up a can of spaghetti sauce and pour it over and bake them until they're cooked through. And you've got a meal. So they're really handy to have on hand. You could do the same thing as I'm doing here with a lasagna. You could cook your lasagna noodles and then lay out a lasagna noodle flat, spread it and cover it with your ricotta sauce, and then roll it up. Then you've got these rolled lasagna pieces, and they will cook just like these shells in pasta sauce and maybe some meat sauce, and they will be yummy too. You'll have a little more of the pasta in the rolled up lasagna. The shells will have more of the filling, but so if you like more pasta, that would be the way to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of these filled up, and then I'll bring you back when I'm done and show you what we've got. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so that was the last one. Here is what I have. And at the end, I just have a couple of broken pieces of pasta, and I can just throw those in our dish that we're making. And then I had a partial one that I just went ahead and put a little bit of ricotta filling in. And really all I've got is, I've probably got a cup left of my filling, and I could get more pasta shells, or I could use the lasagna and do a roll up with them. But what I think I'm gonna do is, I think I'm gonna take a plastic bag, and I'm gonna do that right now. So I'm gonna take a plastic bag, and this is a quart-size freezer bag, and I am just going to put the filling right in here. Make sure you get all of it in there. And I'm going to take the air out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flatten it out into the shape of this bag. That way it's going to be really easy to thaw out or to break some off. And I do this quite often when I'm making these, and anytime I'm making like a pizza or any other type of baked pasta, I can take this and add it to it. If I'm doing a pizza, what I would do is just break it off in pieces and just put them on the top of the pizza, and they will cook up really nicely. So that is going into the freezer. I'll be sure to label what it is. And again, it's not very thick, probably 1/2 inch thick, and it's ready to freeze. It does very well in the freezer. So before I take this stuff out to the freezer to freeze, let's go ahead and put together our pasta dish. So let me clean this up, and I'll be right back. All right, so now we're ready to assemble a pasta dish for this. Now you can make this any size. You can use a big 13x9 casserole dish. That's what I will put it in if we're having company and having several people eating. But since it's just Andy and I want to put it in this little dish, and I'm going to put enough to make 2 dinners in it. That way we can have leftovers tomorrow. So the first thing I want to do, and again, whatever size dish you're using would be the same thing. I'm just going to spray my pan a little bit. And I'm using our homemade spaghetti sauce. You can use whatever kind of spaghetti sauce you like. And if you can your own, you know, this is great. We love our own. So I'm going to put just a small layer of our tomato sauce on the bottom, and then I'm going to put however many shells I think would be good for the 2 of us. And so I'm thinking 3 per meal. And maybe this is just gonna do 1 meal. We'll just do 1 meal with this. I could get a bigger pan, but I wanna keep it small so it will go into my countertop air fryer, which is like a toaster oven, and it will bake. It's got a bake setting and everything, and that way we won't have to turn on the big oven for this. Let's see, I have 6, 7, 8, no, I have 8 of them in here. I think I've got room for 1 more. I'll make it 9. And we can do 2 per night if we wanted to. You know, 2 would probably be plenty for us, especially once we get the meat on it. So we can make this into a 2-night meal. So let's see, I've got my pork sausage right here, and I've just added that garlic, so I'm just gonna stir it around. I'm not going to be using all of this in my pasta shells bake, but I'm going to sprinkle a nice bit on top. Okay, that looks good. And then we're going to cover it with our spaghetti sauce. And this will seep down in there and cover up the sides and the corners. Okay, now I'm also going to sprinkle it with a little Parmesan cheese. And I'm going to cover and bake this until those are hot and bubbly in the center. You want to cook them all the way through. I will pull them out a little bit early, uncover it, sprinkle it with some more cheese on the top, and then place it back in the oven just until the cheese on top is nice and bubbly. And then we will have a really delicious homemade pasta meal. So I'm going to cover this. I'm not going to bake it until a little later this evening. And when I do, I will bring you back to show you what it looks like when it's done. These right here, here's what we have left for our freezer. I'm going to be flash freezing them. I'll separate them out so they're not touching. I'll be flash freezing them, putting them in a Ziploc bag and freezing them like that. And our ricotta cheese, I'll be putting that in the freezer as well. Now, another thing I did want to say is if you wanted to put sausage in your filling, or beef or any kind of meat in your filling, you could definitely do that. I opt to not do that and just add it to my sauce. That way, depending on who is eating with us and whether or not they like certain meats or if they're allergic to certain meats, we can easily adjust that once we take them out of the freezer and make. If I have somebody in the family that can't eat beef, and we've made a spaghetti sauce with beef, I can easily take a couple of the shells, put them in a really small casserole dish, put some sauce on them without any meat, and bake them like that for that person. So they're very flexible to use. That's one thing I really like about this. And you can just easily whip these up. I do not thaw them when I bake them. I just take them out, put them in the sauce-bottomed casserole dish, layer it with whatever you want in there, stick it in the oven. And I bake it about 350. And again, I don't know how long, it's all dependent on your oven, but you want the center shells to be hot and cooked fully. Remember, we do have eggs in the filling, so you want them fully cooked. And usually it's bubbling all over, okay? So I hope you enjoy this meal, and I'll have pictures of what it looks like after we pull it out of the oven. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you back here soon. Remember, if you want the recipe for this, you will find it at the end of this video, a picture of it. I will also post it in about 2 days after this video is released on my Facebook page. It's Blue Rooster Farm, and you can find all of the recipes from the videos that I have done on that page. So I really appreciate you watching. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon. It is now evening time, and I went out to the freezer, and these are all solidly frozen. So I'm just going to break them apart and place them in this 1-gallon Ziploc bag. And we've got lots here to enjoy. I will zip it up and take the air out of it and put it right back in the freezer so we can take what we want out and leave the others in the freezer. And here it is, our delicious baked stuffed shells. I'd taken it out of the oven about 10 minutes ago. I just wanted it to rest and kind of cool down just a bit. And now I'm serving it up in some pasta bowls for Andy and I. I wish you could smell this kitchen. It just smells so delicious in here. I know Andy came in from the shop a while ago and said it was smelling like an Italian restaurant. But it is so, so yummy. So we'll serve it up with a side of green beans from our garden. We had canned those earlier this year, and we have a wonderful meal. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. Also, don't forget to like and share. That helps me out a lot also. Have a great week.